The time has come for my people to go.
I'm not a queen, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not a king, I'm a servant of the people. It's what the people demand, and we gonna keep fighting till we get that land. I'm not a queen, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not a king, I'm a servant of the people. It's time to rise, to get what we want, we got to organize.
Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good people, good comrades, wherever you are in the world. This is the Pantsula Podcast, as rep by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Myself and Evan are organizers with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you were not aware of our objective, it is a unified Africa under scientific socialism. If you in any way, shape, or form have any questions for us in regards to that, you can come to us. We have an international website as well, AAPRP-intl.org. It will be in the description, just like many other things will be in our description as usual. So, as we also do every single week, without the ancestors, we would not be here doing the work that they left behind for us to continue, and future generations will continue that work. So before we do any episode, we honor our ancestors. Who are our ancestors today, Comrade Evan?
Our two ancestors for this episode are going to be Amari Obadele and Nahanda Abiodun, and they're going to be especially relevant for the topic we're going to speak about, which I'll get into and we'll get into later. Amari Obadele, he is known as a Black Power activist, and he was of the Republic of New Africa. Republic of New Africa was founded in March 1968. He was with other members of the RNA, such as Robert F. Williams, Betty Shabazz, Queen Mother Moore, Tupu Lumumba, first Mary Baraka, Alana Karenga, and Jamil Abdullah Alamin, the other ancestors and elders that we've spoken about before. In addition to the RNA, he is also a co-founder of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America and COBRA, again, a part of the reparations movement. And as we talk about certain groups talk about reparations, again, it's not just tied with just getting a check or getting some kind of monetary gain. It's also about recompense for all that the United States has done to Africans here, or for the world of New Africans here to establish itself. And one phrase that is pretty relevant from from ancestor Mario Badali is "free the land." We're just talking about freeing the land of the states of what's called New Africa. Speaking of Africa, our second ancestor is Nahanda Abiodun, also for the New African independence struggle. She started work as a tenant organizer, worked with the National Black Human Rights Coalition, and also worked with healing people at the Black Acupuncture Association of North America with one of our elders who we're still working to free, Dr. Pantsula Shakur. She went into exile in Cuba as like elder Asad Shakur, because as part of the Brinks Trucks Corporation, she is also a member of another organization which was organized with the Malcolm X grassroots movement. These two ancestors are quite close to me as people who helped establish the Malcolm X grassroots movement and the New African movement in general. She was also known as the mother of Cuban hip hop. And to tie it all together, she worked with Pablo Herrera to establish the continued growth of the topic we're speaking of today, Black August. So that's a lot of words to say. Okay, Black August. So there might be some people like Black August. Like, don't you already have a month? Don't you already have February? So the first thing to remember is that Black August does have a specific history, and even if we're talking about Black History Month, that February has a specific history as well. It's starting from the History Week with R.G. Woodson and so forth, and commemorating Henry Douglas and Lincoln. And in the case of Black August, I'm going to read a couple of things from this song by the name of Mama Yana Masama. Each year, officially since 1979, we have used the month of August to focus on the oppressive treatment of our brothers and sisters disappeared inside the state-run gulags, concentration camps, America calls prisons. It is during this time that we concentrate on efforts to free our mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, and all of the captive family and friends who have been held in isolation for decade after decade beyond their original sentence. Many of these individuals are held in the sensory deprivation and mind control units, foster security housing units, SHU program, not even the most basic rights. She's quoting Ashaka Atien, who was part of the Black August Organizing Committee, who's another ancestor. Africans have, especially in the United States, have struggled against the oppressive system, whether through under slavery or Jim Crow.
They coming to get you. They coming to get you. Talking about Black August in prisons, like, okay.
Yeah, see, like they're trying to interrupt us. I tell you. When I think again, why August so to go further along, she discusses that Jonathan Jackson, brother Jonathan Jackson, was gunned down outside the Marion County, California courthouse on August 7th, 1970, as he attempted to liberate three imprisoned Black liberation fighters, James McClain, Wayne Christmas, and Michelle McGee. And Michelle McGee still locked up and still trying to get him out. Another point is his brother George Jackson was assassinated on August 21st, 1971 by the San Quentin prison guards. Assassination was a deliberate move on behalf of the U.S. government to eliminate the revolutionary leadership of George Jackson. In the midst of the government's set up orchestrated to murder George, 3 prison guards were killed in the Counter Rebellion. The government charged 6 Black and Latino prisoners with crimes that these 6 brothers were St. Quentin 6. So that's part of why it was done. And for the first Black August of 1979, brothers and political family members wore black armbands in the left arm, say Revolutionary Works, as well as Comrade Jackson. Many participated in fasting for Ramadan, and the connection between those two will give more into some of the things that were done in August, and talks more about like history as like specific events. He talks about specific events from the early commemorations of Black August to commemorate Black August. We also have a number of the racist oppression and righteous rebellion and resistance to oppression that find this commemorative month, include the arrival of the first enslaved Africans to Jamestown, Virginia in August 1619, the start of the Great Haitian Revolution in August 1791, the call for a general strike by enslaved Africans by Henry Highland Garnet, August 22nd, 1843, initiation major that conducted Underground Railroad on August 2nd, 1850. Talk about also Gabriel Process Rebellion in 1800, the Rebellion of Nat Turner in 1831, the Township of Allensworth in 1803, the March on Washington, Watts Rebellion, the attack on the Booth family in 1978, also the birth of like Dr. Pantsula Shakur, Marcus Garvey, the recently transitioned Russell Maroon Schultz, and Chairman Fred Hampton, as well as the death of W.E.B. Du Bois and Huey P. Newton. As we said multiple times, like Africans, we've been fighting, and we've been fighting this whole time. Yes, there's been a strain of oppression and exploitation of Africans, both here in the States as well as on the continent and in the diaspora. But again, there's also been a long history of rebellion and resistance. So when you have something that based for new Africans, you'll certainly get some mainstream attention at some point, although Black August is relatively recent, that it's still maintains its mainly militant struggle with it. But as the Comrade Jamil will talk about, even so, there'll still be attempts to try to extract it from this and explain.
Like a lot of revolutionary movements, if you will, there have been some capitalist infiltration enough to do a report on these movements. So there's one specifically, CNN. So they discussed what the difference is between Black August and Black History Month. And so it says, read it from Capitalist News Network, y'all. Don't hate us. It says Black August is separate from Black History Month in February, which is a federally recognized celebration that calls on all Americans to reflect on how African Americans have shaped U.S. history. Carter G. Woodson, the son of former enslaved people, is largely credited with the February celebration. So you mentioned Carter G. Woodson. Frustrated with the absence of Africans from, they said Black people, we're saying Africans, from history textbooks, Woodson developed Negro History Week in 1926 in an attempt to write Africans into the nation's history. He believed, quote, the achievements of the Negro properly set forth will crown him as a factor in early human progress and a maker of modern civilization. In 1976, Negro History Week expanded into Black History Month. So Black History Month is actually as old as I am. That's wonderful, right? Black August, which also came about in the 1970s, specifically honors, quote, political prisoners, freedom fighters, and martyrs of the Black freedom struggle, according to the Center for Constitutional Rights. So yeah, they have a whole page on their site as well. This says Black August call for reflection, study, and action to promote Black liberation. And that was told to Truly Press. It also says that some people are taking this time to learn. Why take only a month to learn? Learn every day. So it talks about No Name, call her a singer, I don't know, who launched a book club that highlights works written by authors of color, is among those calling on people to engage with Black August. This is what she said on Twitter. Quote, Black History Month is beautiful, but unfortunately, like all Black culture, it has been co-opted by neoliberal capitalists, and we rarely learn about all the contributions Black radicals have made in resistance against the settler colonial nation state. Another quote, we don't learn about political prisoners who sacrificed their lives to fight against imperialism/colonialism. Many of our revolutionaries are still incarcerated and are treated with specific repression because of their radical politics. So that also, before we get back into discussion about Black August and the co-optation or the attempt to bring a particular side to it, what is going on in recent cases with the African Malign in Russia Act, or recent cases of, highlighting Africans who supposedly commit violence, even though there's larger state-sanctioned violence upon our people. And so a lot of what's highlighted in capitalist media is a means to get it in people's minds. As they do articles on Black August, there's larger structural issues of attacking African people. There's a larger structure issue of attacking African revolutionaries. There's a larger structural issue of assuring that people think that capitalism is still, again, while having articles about Black August, it's like, what, you're a communist? Wait a minute. Oh, but capitalism is going to somehow work for us and we just need to tweak it. So while they're talking at one end of their fingers, if you will, then their actions say a whole other thing. Because if you look at CNN's history, if you look at the history of all of these capitalist networks, they're simply reporting on this, but I think that it's what the actions say that we need to look at more. I think that's, looking at everything dialectically, and maybe someone sees this on CNN and decides to become a revolutionary actor. I don't know, that's great. But we have to also see what angle people are coming from. And I think this, some people might not deem it co-optation, but the enemy using language of revolutionary people or language of historically what's been revolutionary movements or liberatory movements, and then working those same words against the people is something that's historically done. So while you're addressing prison liberation movement, you're also in support of it by advocating for the military industrial complex, advocating for the imperialist takeover of democratically elected countries, and so on. Again, we can see the history of CNN, the actions of people who work for CNN. Don't have to say much else. Versus, the piece that you read, other pieces in regards to Black artists on the internet, you can see the work people do. And you can tell whether someone's sincere. Oh, yeah.
And so along, if you think of some of the rebellions during the George Floyd rebellions or the Ferguson and so forth rebellions and the subsequent Solidarity rebellions, that I just certainly remember the FCNN chants, especially for the Ferguson. So again, there is recognition of how capitalist media will point out certain things or exaggerate some things and not look at the reality on the ground. And or if they try to look at people on the ground, it'll be certain ones who certainly let's just say camera ready. So they've had that prep. So and in response, I know people who will say, well, you always talk about stuff being co-opted. The co-op, they co-opt your land, they co-opt this. Like, okay, can't you find any? Not only do you take responsibility for your actions and for your struggle, do you have to worry about co-opting everything? For one, that will happen. But one thing that especially is illuminates for me for Black August is that there's an aspect to that I don't necessarily can't be co-opted, but certainly there is certainly enough within the picture of it that it'd be a lot more difficult than has happened with Black History Month. And this is from the Black Grassroots Movement website. That one part of important part is not just learning about all these different dates of these rebellions and leaders and so forth, but also they have four principles of fasting, studying, training, and fighting. So fasting, no eating or drinking from the sun up to sundown. And as I said in my introduction about Black August, that there is a connection between the commemoration of political process as well as Islam. So again, there's that connection. And as we said with the A-APRP, that religion and revolution are not antagonistic forces. They have obviously there have been instances of religion being used to as public missionaries and colonizers to distract away from the issues or use it to divide people, but it can also act as a revolutionary force. And in this way, it's one way we do this. So fasting, eating, and drinking from sun up to sundown. Yeah, there might be social media influencers or celebs who do the whole intermittent, if you might heard recently about just the trend of intermittent fasting. And again,
wait, hold on. I have been doing intermittent fasting for about 6 years. So some people might think it's a trend, but I think to your point, the connection between religion and revolution, whoever's doing it for a trend. And, I think that doing a trend like that, if it's a trend to somebody, not making the connection, the relationship to food and production. And I think when people, in the case of Black August, or even in the case of somebody practicing Islam, there is maybe with Islam, not the connection between the relationship to production, but it is a relationship with in a spiritual sense, because one of the 5 pillars is also contributing to someone who doesn't have as much. So I think that's a huge aspect of that. And so fasting during Black August, there's another connection where you're working with people who have been oppressed by the state in some way. So it's always a relationship to production, or really asking those questions around class hierarchies. So I think that, yes, again, I have been doing intermittent fasting, but understanding a particular relationship to food and production. So I don't know, I just wanted to say that because I'm like, wait, I've been doing.
Oh yeah,
Anyway.
I get you. Obviously, it's not a new thing. Like, yeah, it's like it's been something that's been practiced for plenty. So you might see it in, say, some news reports, or again, like some influencers and celebrities who talk about that and bring this to the forefront as like, oh, look at this thing that I discovered, and or like I'll see like some pages I'll follow that, like, if you're in the fitness, or even if certain things can be commodified or taken to popularize at some point to remove it away from the, as you say, the spiritual or the or the whole economic aspect of it, that it is something that can be part of a practice that allows for resistance to the cooperation that there is. And it's also not only the fasting, also the study to devote time daily to learn about our struggle. And again, as I said, it is important. It's not saying that you shouldn't learn all stuff in August, but it's one of a larger program that of fasting study, and also training, exercising, physical training, that as many people said, that the police, the military, the nationalists, the militiamen, the Klan, the Nazis, and so forth, their training. Obviously, we do want like inclusive, mass movement. So obviously, there could be limitations for certain people about what people can do physically and so forth. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it should be discouraged. Like, if you have the ability to do so, you should do that. Like, if you might notice that I don't want to say I'm big, but it's certainly I could use some. I could use it. So I've been exercising. So again, I'm trying to do my own training. So again, you have to make sure that you got to be ready at some point. Like, if you gotta run somewhere, or even, and then even like, it doesn't even be like a street battle or some, or like anything like this. Just simply, again, speaking of something that's been sort of co-opted and commodified, the whole self-care issue of getting enough sleep, making sure you're able to have time to de-stress, that is also part of the fitness. It's not only about the weights or the running or swimming or whatever physical activity. Also, make sure, like, yeah, you want to train, but also it doesn't make sense to train like 3 hours a day and never take a day off, because at that point you're just gonna worse. Well, again, making sure you understand how your body is feeling and resting as well, and fight. So, and again, it's not only about like martial arts or weapons or anything, although that's certainly is a part of it, but also involved in an organization. Like we say, you join an organization for Black liberation. So if you join one, or again, if you have comrades or just people around you. Like I talked about with the ancestor, kind of Abia Duna, she was a tent organizer. Another ancestor was a Balagoon, also a tent organizer. So if you struggle with, like, if you know about rents, not just here the snakes, but also elsewhere, that they're trying to extract as much value from the land and from you as possible. So it makes sense to have someone to go talk to me, saying, hey, we're tired of being screwed by these landlords or these companies. So or if you don't have homes, there have been homeless unions. There have been is people in the sex trade, of people who are domestic work, of people in other things. So again, like organizing, elaboration and for and it's those things that make it a lot more difficult to pull out compared to History Month. And speaking of other things that while we talk about like fasting, like as like fasting is food, also mentioned other things. They going back to Mama Ayana's piece about not using drugs, smoking, or monitoring herbs, alcohol, beverages during the month. Not go to any corporate store for anything other than essentials and medical health related items. Do not watch TV or listen to radio from sunrise to sunset. Do not watch corporate television or movies at all unless for educational purposes. Do not patronize fast food or commercial eating establishment vendors. Eat healthy and natural, just food, beverages to boost your body. So obviously, when you're not fasting, then eat the wait, hey, I thought you were telling me to fast, but now you want me to eat. So, but again, observe Black August education study groups, and sort of work out individually or collectively. Contribute funds and ways from Black August events to those in prison or legal funds, the people, and while it's certainly they focus on the political prisoners and prisoners of war. They can also be like people you might know who because this system that exploits and needs super exploited labor, like get locked up. So to that as well, and educate your family, your loved ones about what's happening. A lot, like, again, the corporate aspect of the corporate media will tell you a lot about prisons as you'll get a certain view of prisons, and they'll tell you that it's like how like ridiculously dehumanizing it is. There can be. It don't help like, and obviously one like of the one jokes is about prison rape is like it's being used as a joke. And one thing is if you read like studies on it, like a lot of the assault isn't so much prisoner in prison, although it happened, but by the guards or the COs to those imprisoned. And again, like the power next to that as well. And visit people in prison, and not obviously not just in but also in a year. And Congress Express Blues Movement, they have a political prisoner committee. If you're part of it or you want to join, you can do so. The link to their site there, and obviously other organizations do it. We have the Anarchist Black Cross about Northeast Political Prison Committee, other sorts. And if you remember our political prison episode, again, the same thing. So all those things make it a lot more difficult to be co-opted. You might have some things they might even take it, like let's talk about the fasting or like exercise, like some stuff can be individual, but taking it all together, it's a lot more difficult for it to be used by systems it's hard to say. It's hard for McDonald's to run a Black August menu because when the whole point is to not go to a fast food restaurant. It's hard to do that, or to go to Walmart, or visit Amazon or anything obviously it's difficult because of like monopolization of capital. But again, it's a bit more difficult to do that when you have a month that's based on collective study, collective work, and resistance to the capitalist machine. So
yeah, I think there are two different elements to this. CNN or whoever else asked the question around what the differences are. And while it mentioned that Black History Month is federally celebrated, the thing that gets highlighted year after year after year are the bourgeois aspects of African life. So you don't see any mention when doing these federal celebrations or whatever of revolutionaries in the movement at all. And so I think the major difference, even beyond the petty bourgeois aspect of Black History Month, but the fact that people who live under a specific type of state-sanctioned violence are able to, in whatever way, whether it's minimal or ginormous, are able to control their destiny in some way. So even if it is having a hunger strike or a fast, if it's having a prison break, if it's fighting those who are under that system of oppression, so the middle managers of that oppressive state in the prison. So, and then communicating with people on the outside to keep that work going. This is why Black August will never be a federal holiday, because it is the people who are the most oppressed or marginalized, if you will, that are really at the forefront of this movement of Black August. So whether it's people on lockdown, whether it's garment workers, whatever it is, those are the people whose narrative shaped Black August, people who are Pan-Africanists, people who have been demonized, who have been deported, who have been in prison. Like, that is who is guiding Black August, as opposed to, hey, we want to honor a Barack Obama in February or whatever. So you can't control the narrative. You can simply report on it, but you cannot control the narrative because it is not a bourgeois narrative. So I think that is the primary difference between Black History Month and Black August.
And while it, as we say, while Black August was on the United States state, that and one of the things that is mentioned is the start of the Haitian Revolution. So yeah, it's like a in the obviously that the favors of Pan-Africanism of the party, but also just the idea of like Pan-African of different Africans of different nations who are joining together to overthrow enslavement, and like you said, like you don't want even not like you can't not as a different like impossible to it's like make it a federal holiday like. But if our wanted to do it, I wonder why. Like, why would you want that? Again, like we say, like it's pretty difficult to do so given both the anchors of it and of like who's on it and like the classes on it. But like this might just be the sort of like like sometimes like social media like sometimes people will say. They'll make up a character of someone that they've never met, or of someone that might like, but even so, like, but still, it's something you can't be, and you sure, and if you have the idea, just get out, just get out of your head, just get out.
So there's the question of people understanding the conditions of people on lockdown, but are not sure if they support abolition of the carceral system. So someone might say, well, obviously they did something, they're deserving of being in prison. Like, why would you not want a prison system? What are you supposed to do when you have all the criminals on the streets? And then this whole thing. So what would your response be as a person who understands the nature of the carceral system? What would be an alternative? Because somebody who has these questions hasn't thought about alternatives. They're going on a mode of fear. I'm going to get robbed. I'm going to, these people are going to come in. And so what would your response be to that?
If you see or hear about any shareholder or politician or someone of immense wealth, those are the people who are like the biggest criminals or like crime as defined by the way they understand that like the girl of Fanon is like you're white, you're rich because you're white because you're rich, you're black, you're poor because you're black. Again, like it's tied, like a lot of it is tied to nation, class, and gender and so forth. That that it's not that it's going to, again, that, yeah, like I don't want to like be randomly like hit up like smacked upside my head or something, or have a bullet. Like I wouldn't want that. Like no one would. But again, like, if you're working somewhere and you wonder where, like, you did all this work and you don't wonder where the heck is the rest of the money, and like what are the extra zeros, or why is all this taken from me, and or why am I paying so much for some healthcare, or why am I paying so much for this, and why is it difficult for me to go? Again, like it's a criminal system. Like it's a criminal system, and one thing is, remember, is that for the vast majority of people who are incarcerated, it's based on property, or property crime, so called. It's not like 90% of people are like Jeffrey Dahmer or something like that, like or like or like Jeffrey Epstein or something like that. I think there's like sort of a representation that every single person is like gonna come out of prison and just like bite your head off. But there are people like who, one reason or another, they grew up in substandard housing, or no housing at all, or they go through school that doesn't teach them, but they've been assaulted, or they've been forced to work with low pay because of their gender, or anything like that. That when really use it, they decide, hey, I'm going to follow the rules. And again, a lot. And another thing to remember is that in a lot of cases, as far as the difference between like the incident of like what happened and who actually gets locked up, like, is like a vast difference. If we're like about drug use with the new Jim Crow, even though like you have like biological differences with Michelle Alexander, like it lays out the fact that drug, as far as drug use is, for one, that it really like reflects, as far as the actual drug uses or drug selling, there's no hardly any difference by race, but as far as like actual arrests and time spent, and it's very biased, and that's not even getting to the death penalty, which is heavily biased for based on race and class too. So like you're not going to hear about any of these like billionaires getting executed for some like environmental crime or some like mass fraud or something like that. Like that's not going to happen. And as far as, and just as far as like what things need to be done, even though some of the socialist experiments have developed different methods on like how to resolve things. A big part is that is one thing we talk about is like think it collectively, and if there are issues, how to handle these collectively in a humanistic way, so that it may not get to the point where someone does something that is like anti-diverse, or does something that's and if it does at that point, then figure out ways to handle without the intervention of the capitalist settler state. So
absolutely. And thinking about a past episode you did in regards to who creates crime or who decides what crime is, what you're talking about is that particular nonviolent crimes like drug use or whatever, or even maybe spray painting on whatever, or damaging a building in some way gets you jail time. There's recently been changes to Title IX where it makes it harder to report assaults. And so, when there's literal violation over someone's body, like it's hard to even report that. And then when people do go to the police, in many cases, they are further victimized. So given that there's no structure for women or folks of marginalized genders and people who are oppressed to, talk about whether it's family members or, someone at your school or whoever. And then on top of that, the the repeal of Roe v. Wade. That's a whole other conversation. But, all of these things that are happening make it harder and harder for people. So obviously, that's a form of criminalization that doesn't benefit the wealth classes or the people who control the structure of power, as opposed to, hey, you threw a brick into a bank. Oh, you get 25, whatever. So really looking at, what is seen as a criminal offense, what's even seen as, felony versus a misdemeanor, or and then it depends on state to state, and then you have castle doctrine, and all of these things depending on the state, where there's situations of women who were defending themselves against their husbands and were in prison, even though the husband was totally abused them, but they were defending themselves and put a gunshot into the air and in prison for that. So it doesn't apply for everyone because it doesn't benefit the structure of creating a system of inhumanity, creating a system of inequity and inequality, and creating a system of profit for a few. So yeah, throwing a brick into a window, or having a protest or whatever, that's damage of property, even having a protest. So it's interesting how you were talking about these lines of criminality and what and who it benefits, because I think this goes with very much the role of Black August, because there's been strikes and prison breaks and all kinds of things, but collective structure that acknowledges the system of oppression upon African bodies, I think, is a very specific thing to look at. And then, adding to larger revolutionary processes like the Haitian Revolution for liberation, being inspired and influenced by something like that, and then going down the line and looking at the UNIA and Marcus Garvey, looking at that and how all of these things are tied to August. So I don't know, there's something about August that people are like, oh, it's hot, I don't know, but August somehow is that month. I know revolution happens every day, but for some reason, there's all these things that happen during August, and I think that.
And not to brag or anything, or even put myself in that, but I was born in August, so.
Of course you were. Of course you were. Wait, you a Leo or a Virgo?
Virgo.
Virgo, yeah, you're the later end of August. But yeah, just looking at the fire in the bellies of people, whether it's August, whether it's September, whether it's February, whether it's July, whatever month, every day we're going to have that struggle if we are in the imperialist core. But taking the time to have a month for us without any capitalist oversight is something I'm always going to support. It just is. And so there's nothing wrong with honoring people in February if that's your thing. But understanding whenever you start getting something to be a federal holiday, you're going to run into some problems. There are years and years and years people have been trying to get Martin Luther King Day for a federal holiday. And then look what happened when they made it a federal holiday. And then you have John McCain was not into having a federal holiday for Martin Luther King. I'll tell you that. But yeah, like they're not doing anything to honor his anti-imperialist notions. They're not doing anything to honor whatever critiques he had of capitalism. They're not even honoring when he was just like, the bootstrap theory is a myth. They're not honoring anything about his critique of imperialist war and how it connects to the oppression of people where he lived. So who cares about your federal holiday? And so, yeah, Black August should not be a federal holiday, and it never will be based on what we've said.
It'll only be a federal or holiday in a nation once we have New Africa. That's the only time it's okay. But before that, let's.
So yeah, you can get capitalist media discussing that, but they're not going to discuss the structure which brought people to rebellion. So I don't, again, if it does inspire people who saw that to say, I'm going to join an organization, I think that's great. We look at everything dialectically, but do not look at that as the primary source based on the history of these networks, these websites, these news sources, etc. Do not look at that as being the preeminent source of your information. Please look beyond that. There's a wealth of books. There's a wealth of voices of people still physically here that can guide you, that can help you, that can lead you to other bits of information. It's not even about having a day or whatever, but that is a means to get you to look into the further writings, to look into doing more work. And I think that is really the purpose of Black August, because you just stated the actions that people take, the serious actions, the serious work that people partake in when doing Black August. So this is not just like, hey, we're going to celebrate a bunch of Black people. And, no, it's not about that. So there's serious guidelines of what to do. So it is really removing yourself from whatever aspects of the system that you are physically able to do. So like it says, say you live in the hood and you don't have a health food store, you got to go to whatever store, maybe it's a major store that you have to get food from. Or, maybe, the particular things like Facebook or whatever, like that's your only line of communication with your family and you need that right now because you have health problems, whatever it is. But using the least amount of connection to this system is what the objective is. So this whole point, and we've talked about this a lot. If you hate capitalism so much, how come you have a job? It's because the material conditions call for us having jobs. Do you like getting up and going to your job every day? You complain about how they steal from your paycheck. Why not join an organization? So why are you asking me why I have a job if I hate capitalism when you're literally complaining about the same thing I am? We have to understand those connections, the larger roots of the structures of why Black August is a thing for us. The whole point of it is doing self-reflection. So it's very similar. You mentioned particularly with the fasting, from media, from like capitalist media, from food, from all of this. But ultimately, because so many people spend so much of their lives on the internet, and before that I was watching TV or whatever, but really taking a fast from all that and doing self-reflection and really reading up on these movements and reading up on the liberation struggle. I think that's really the ultimate goal of this, is to really forge some study with other folks, because that's the best kind of study, is when you're doing it communally, when you're doing it collectively, and then going out and doing work. So that really is, while there's organizing around prison liberation, there's all this stuff, but still it's organizing. So the root of Black August is to really get at the root of what the problem is and doing work around it. As usual, it always comes to that, right? So.
And I was just talking about with the ancestors of Mario Bedell and Abiodun. One source that you could also read about with them, and also on New Africa in general, is from MXGM comrade Edwin Nachi, Free the Land, Hope Through African, Sue a Black Nation State. We've seen our episodes. We also had someone from the provincial government of Africa, comrade who talked about that as well. So there's a lot of sources. Aki Shakur, lots of places you get really to understand this, and to talk about Abiodun being the mother of Cuban hip hop, Have any last thoughts of what was people should think about for Black August?
What people should think about Black August is that, again, utilize it as a call to action. Don't just utter people's names and do nothing. You're not going to honor them if you're not taking action in the struggle against oppression of all peoples. So that's really what I want to say about that. If we're talking about last word for the episode, take that moment, even if you're not able for whatever reason to do a fast, whether it's food, whether it's media, whatever. You might work in media and still want to honor Black August. Find a way to do that. But the thing is, again, if you honor without taking action, then your sentiments are just empty as far as I'm concerned.
And again, not only taking action, but also do it collectively too. So yeah, like it's like if you're able to fast, able to fight for yourself and do all that, like great, good for you. Like, I'm not gonna say it, not gonna downplay for you for that, but the whole point is like it's like the struggle of Africans, of new Africans to do so. So it helps to like get people to know, people know that, like, and like we know that when capitalist patriarchal media is not gonna spread it out. Talk to people at work, talk to people at school, talk to people in your hood. So, and I know there are viewers not in the United States wondering about it. Again, like since it honors like Africans, like, even though it's like the focus on new Africans here, is we also it's all catered for the Africans, in the Caribbean, in South America, and back home in Africa and Europe or elsewhere, to all those Africans who've been fighting, like who've been doing the fighting, who've been making the sacrifice and organizing and doing so, and work with them. So even if it doesn't like to that, let's do something. And if it maybe there's something where you are similar to Black August, there's honor those to where you are than yourself. So again,
Absolutely.
make sure we know about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you need some further inspiration, oh, that's a good word. Inspiration of information. So inspiration. Did I just make up a word? So if you need some inspiration, we have other comrades who are doing this media work. So we have our ancestors' voices, which comes on Sunday. So Comrade Ajamu and Shakura. We have the weekly Pan-African news. We have the Forward Ever podcast, and we have Revolutionary African Women. There's also the Forward Ever shop. So say you get inspired to do work because of Black August or one of our podcasts, whatever it is, you can go to the Forward Ever shop and say, hey, I'm doing this work proudly. So that's all the information that will be in the description. So check that out and join an organization. We say it about at least 2 times in an episode, if not 20, to join an organization, because this work is always been important, but it's of utmost importance right now because the system understands how many people are organizing and at the very least becoming aware of how inhumane this system is and studying and reading up on information. So they are really, this CNN poster, they're jumping way ahead because they're like, okay, we gotta go ahead so they know, and we have to be the bearers of information. But don't let them be the primary bearers of that information. Get the work from the people, because the people are the ones who are doing the work. It's not these capitalist news networks. So get the work from the primary sources, the readings, and don't just be inspired by the readings and just sit there and say, I have this new information. Be inspired by those readings to go out and do collective work. because that is the only way we are going to defeat the enemy. That is the only way we are going to see liberation for ourselves. And it may not happen in our lifetime, but many of us have children, grandchildren, cats, dogs, whatever. And if we want them to see revolution, we have to do that work now and then continue the work later on, because the ancestors, as we said in the beginning, as we say every week, they have prepared for us to be ready to do this work. And we can make a ton of mistakes, and that's fine, but we're doing the work, and making mistakes in this work is far better than not doing the work at all. So let's get to work. Good people, good comrades. It's wonderful to see you again, Evan, and it's wonderful to be alive to do another episode this week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Forward ever, backwards, never.
Forward.